What's up, babe?
It's here. It's here. I'm scared to open it.
What's here?
What do you mean, what's here? The thing I've been waiting for all month to get here, and it was late getting here. You didn't hear me talking about it all on the phone? I was on the phone last night with Aida talking about it. You didn't hear that?
Sharnika, I have had a long day. I have a lot on my mind. I am tired.
I get it.
What
but this is important. This is important. Listen.
What is it?
It's the letter from Virginia Union.
Would you please get to, what do you want to say?
I got accepted. to the demon program. I gotta let them know by tomorrow. What you think?
Babe, look, I know you're excited about this, but we talked about this. You know how much money this is gonna cost?
When did we talk about it?
And do you know this is gonna pull you away from family?
But you're here.
As often as I've said, you know what?
No,
you are
okay,
just
wait.
selfish.
Did
You every
you
time.
just call me selfish?
You are
Okay.
You never sacrifice for us.
Sir, I'm gonna need.
Listen, I want to support you.
Calm it down.
I am not finished talking, woman. I am not finished talking.
See,
now,
you do this to me all the time. You do this to me all the time. You remember you did that the other night when we were at Paris's house.
Why you always bring up old?
And then 2 years ago, you did the same thing. You always telling me.
I'm gonna need you to take the air out of your chest and calm down and let me finish speaking.
Talk, Howard.
Every time we go down this road, I've made sacrifices.
You don't
now you
make
want to go back
any
to
sacrifices
if you
for
don't
nothing.
stop interrupting me, woman.
Why you yelling?
Why am I yelling?
Why you yelling?
I ain't yelling. I am tired of this. You never listen to what I'm saying. You never sacrifice to this family.
Forget it. I'll figure it out myself.
Go on, figure it out for yourself then.
And you.
And your mama. Y'all help me thank God for Sharnika. She just helped me. I want to talk about communicating. And I want to be, I want to give two, thank you, Sharnika. By the way, that is real. She just got into the doctor ministry program at Virginia Union, so we are excited as she hones her skill and works on that next degree. I want to give two caveats before we begin and move quickly tonight. One is that there's a lot of prayer about what to talk about when we say communicating. And there's so many different relationships we bear with family and coworkers and friends, ministries, relationships. And I thought the most relevant topic would be to talk about communicating in relationship, particularly in dating, in marriage, engagement, because that's the most relevant issue for many of us. For those who are here for the very first time, CAYA is different. We are not typical worship service where there's a scripture and we try to find a shout. We try to be practical, relevant, and transparent. And so I want to talk a little bit about communicating in relationship, romantic relationships in particular. Also want to give a caveat that I am not a communications expert in any way, shape, or form. And no, I am not standing here suggesting to you I've read books, been to classes. But my desire to talk about this tonight, guided by the Holy Spirit, really comes from two places. Number one, this year I celebrate my 20th year of pastoring. And in 20 years, thank you. It's a long time to be doing something. In 20 years of pastoring, I have had numerous occasions to be involved with couples who come in and, I don't necessarily say want counseling, but they want to talk about some issues. And I found that about 90% of them come into the office thinking they have one problem, but they really have two. Many of them come in thinking that there's an issue that they're dealing with, that there's something they want to get off their chest, that there's a problem they need to fix. But I really found out that it's not just an issue they're dealing with. The problem is that they're not communicating about it, that they're not able to hear each other. They're not able to resolve it. And that's really what Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 14, that it seems like it's talking about speaking in tongues, but really Paul is saying to the church, if you can't communicate with people the good news of Jesus Christ in a way that they understand, you might as well be talking in the air. And many couples have come in and they've been talking in the air. They're both speaking English, but they're not communicating well. And I bet you that if you find any couple, especially in marriage, that's been around for a little bit, that they've got some 10, 20, 30 years behind them, you're not going to find a marriage that has not had issues. You're going to find a marriage where two people have learned to talk to each other. Because two grown people who are able to communicate should be able to work out just about any issue if they're able to communicate well. The second reason I bring this up is that I've looked back over my own life and I realized that learning to communicate has been one of my growing edges in personal relationships. Although I try to communicate regularly in sermon and in Bible study, I found that I had a lot of growth to do in communicating in relationships one-on-one, that I had some bad habits with communicating, mainly silent frustration, that I was one who, for the sake of peace, would not raise the issues that were really perturbing me, that were upsetting me, and then all of a sudden, there's an explosion, right? You want to know what makes a man walk away from 20 years of marriage at the drop of a dime? It's silent frustration. Been dealing with it, and then all of a sudden, you can't deal with it anymore because you're not talking about it. And I had to learn some real communication habits coming out of my divorce because I realized that part of the reason the marriage struggled was I was not a good communicator at home. I didn't know how to raise issues correctly. And so because of that, I've become very reflective. So I want to say a few things. I'm not here suggesting that any of us are going to be perfect communicators, but I do believe that there's a way for us to get there. I believe that there's a way for us to grow in how we communicate. Secondly, I don't believe that every relationship is meant to work, but I do believe that there are some communication hurdles that at least give you a better chance of figuring out, can it really work, or is this just a communication thing? So my goal tonight is not to try to evaluate and tell you whether she's the one or he's the one, but rather I'd like to put a mirror in front of your face to have you reflect over what type of communicator you are, to understand the type of communicator the one you're interested, love, or connected, married to is, and then try to figure out ways that we can grow in our communication skills and patterns, and hope that when we leave this place, we'll at least be challenged to do better. So if we put the slides up, I want to begin. I want to entitle tonight's lesson, Can You Hear Me Now? From 1 Corinthians 14, 6 and 9. As I suggested to you, we have a metaphor at CAYA that we've used since day one, and that is, for those who remember, it's the illustration of a man trying to push a refrigerator out of his door, right? That he's struggling to push a refrigerator out the door. A friend comes by. A friend gets on the other side and tries to help him. After 30 minutes, the refrigerator hasn't moved. The friend says to the one who was getting the refrigerator out, he says, man, I can't believe that the two of us cannot get this refrigerator in the house. And the guy on the other side says, I was trying to get it out of the house. So if you see the illustration, there's one brother pushing this way, and another brother has come up on the other side and is pushing against it. In relationships, that's typically what happens, that we're trying to push something and grow something and make it happen, but we always don't take enough time to figure out what's pushing against it, what prevents it. And so with communication, I found out that there may be an issue we're trying to resolve, there may be a problem we're trying to find an answer to that we're working on. But sometimes what's pushing against us is how we communicate to one another, how we speak, how we talk. And all of us have been in at least one or two relationships where a conversation went really bad unnecessarily, right? And we're left trying to figure out why, and issues that could have been resolved, that could have easily been fixed, wind up causing a split terminally in a relationship because we didn't know how to communicate. An inability to communicate always exacerbates an issue. No matter how minor it may seem, unless we know how to speak and talk and fix things, the problem is always going to get worse. And I'm a living example of that, and I think many of us probably have been down that road where something that you ever look back on a relationship that ended and you really can't figure out why it ended? Like you can't finger point what the issue was, because it probably wasn't the issue, it was probably the problem. The issue may have been X, Y, or Z. The problem was you couldn't communicate, right? And a failure to communicate will break up any relationship. So what I did about 4 or 5 years ago was make a decision to try to learn to communicate better, and I believe that someone who's reflective and corrective can become a better communicator. If you're willing to reflect over your own patterns and correct some weaknesses or tendencies that are not productive, you can become a better communicator. Now, that doesn't mean that the relationship's going to last, because the person you're with may not be on this same journey. Okay? Growing in communication is one of the most difficult things for people to engage in because it requires a lot of self-reflection, and most people are horrible at self-reflection. They are great at reflecting on you. Right? They're great at telling you what's wrong with you, but they're really poor at telling you what's wrong with them and where they're growing. So tonight is really a mirror moment. It's not an opportunity to examine and analyze someone else. It's an opportunity for us to look at ourselves. So I want to ask you a question, and as you raise a few hands, I'll call them out. What makes a conversation go left? If I can use that term, thinking specifically about some of what Sharnika and I just modeled. What makes a conversation go left? That tone. The tone. You got to remember who you're speaking to. What makes a conversation go left? Joseph.
When people listen to respond.
When people listen to respond, but they don't listen to understand. T, what makes a conversation go left? You, and you. That is all about you. What makes conversation go left?
Like the timing of the conversation?
The timing of the conversation. We're going to get to that in a minute, very critical. What makes conversation go left? Lack of empathy, trying to understand, walk in my shoes. Okay? What makes the conversation go left? Delivery. Yep, getting to that tone stuff. What makes conversation go left? Bringing up issues that happened in the past that have not a darn thing to do with what we're talking about. Okay, way in the back here, says, what makes conversation go left? Raised voice, as in the way you just spoke to me. Okay. What makes conversation go left? The means of communication, very good. Some things should not be texted in relationships. There's some conversations that are inappropriate to have over text. What makes conversation go left? Choice of words. Yes. What makes conversation go left? Who you're involving in it. Yeah. What makes it go left? Walking away from it. Cassandra? The words never and always. Let's put some up. I tried to compile a list from my own personal experience and pastoral experience that Sharnika and I tried to embody a little bit. And this in a way is no way exhaustive, but it does show us some of the things that really break down conversation. I want to let you know that conversations fail typically when one of two things happen, okay? Either offense or diversion. Okay? This may be a little theoretical, but two things that will cause a conversation to go left immediately. I mean, there are a lot of symptoms, but here are the two major. One, when I become offended, right? Especially if I come in a moment of vulnerability and I am met with the spirit of offense, my natural inclination are for the walls to go up and for me to start pushing back, right? No one wants to feel like they're vulnerable with someone who is intentionally trying to be offensive. Okay? Or the diversion. And diversion is what we spoke about just a minute with that sister, that the issue is this, but something happens in the conversation that makes it all about this. And as a result, we never deal with what the issue was that brought us to the table, right? That now we're arguing about X, Y, and Z, but the conversation was really about A. And when A doesn't get resolved, now the devil wins, because now there are all these other things that I'm sitting on, and especially if you've never shared it, so someone can be surprised by your bringing other issues into this conversation that they didn't know you were harboring. Right? So one of the things, Daryl, I'm clear about that I try to embody in conversation with someone is, listen, if something bothers you, you should share it when it bothers you. If it does not, please do not wait until I have an issue for you to decide you want to bring up all your issues, right? Because now I feel offended, like you've been waiting and holding on to ammunition so that the minute I bring up something, here you come swinging with all this, and now none of our issues are dealt with. Now we're arguing about who's more offended, right? And as a result, we wind up miscommunicating. When offense and diversion, those are two major things. Let's talk about some that cause it. One, continual interruptions. That someone's like, I know someone that fits that. Continual interruptions speak. So when someone's speaking and you're continually interrupting, what you may not understand is that you're sharing with them some things that are causing offense. Number one, that you don't care to hear me all the way through. Right? Number two, for me, it's important for you to understand that my thought pattern is deeper than 140 characters. So if you're interrupting me before I get to the conclusion of what I'm saying, you and I may wind up arguing over something I'm really not trying to say. Right. I think deeply, and in order for you to understand how I feel, I may need to start all the way back here and make my way over here. And if you keep interrupting me, you and I will never get to what I'm really trying to say, and now I'm really offended because you've really disrespected my thought pattern. So continual interruptions are very disruptive, and it shows a sign of kind of what Joseph said, of someone who's really not listening, someone who's just jumping in and arguing every point when that's really not what I'm trying to say. Cassandra mentioned it, always and never are horrible words to use in conversation, especially in heated moments. You need to delete these words. The minute you use always and never, the conversation is diverted. So let me give you an example. Let's say you are upset that on your birthday I did not take you out to dinner, okay? And rightfully you feel some kind of way about it. So the way you express it to me is saying, you know what, you never take me out to dinner. The minute you tell me that, I am Rolodexing every single moment I've taken you to dinner, and now I'm regurgitating them to you, and you feel like I'm throwing them in your face. And the conversation is now breaking down. Because now the conversation is not about that I didn't take you during your birthday. The conversation is about that I have, you don't remember, and now I feel disrespected for what I've really done. And now the argument has nothing to do with what you brought to the table. Okay? Nobody always and nobody nevers. Right? The minute you use always and never, you put someone in a defensive position to want to argue that they do or that they haven't. And they're going to run the whole list, and the argument is going to go left. Right? Someone who's addicted to being right. Have you ever been in conversation with someone that's got to win the point regardless? They always have to find a way to show they were right about something, right? And an addiction to being right really hinders the ability to communicate correctly. Being intentionally malicious, I have a real problem with people who in communication go for the jugular. You know, say the thing that they know is the most hurtful. Now, we're real at CAYA, right? Sisters, y'all need to stop some of that. There are some things you should hold back from saying because there are those who in discussion want to win. There's a difference between wanting to be healed and wanting to win, right? And those who want to win go for the jugular. They're going to say the thing that's the most hurtful, that shuts the conversation down, and don't realize that some of those wounds I will never walk away from, right? That there's certain things, my vulnerabilities, my insecurities, my iniquities that I'm wrestling with, I don't need you to throw those in my face. Don't be intentionally malicious. Those who analyze and predict but don't really listen, you're not listening to what I'm saying. You're trying to predict what I'm going to say and overanalyze what I'm saying to the point that you're not hearing what I'm actually saying. And as a result, you're going to respond to me in a way that's really not what I was trying to say. One of the things I'm clear with people that I try to share is don't read between the lines with me because you're going to read wrong. But if you listen to what I'm saying, because I work at communicating, I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel. And if you don't take that at face value, then we can't go forward. You know, don't try to overanalyze. No one likes being psychoanalyzed by their mate. Okay. Say that again. No one likes being psychoanalyzed by their mate. Okay. Untimely sarcasm and laughter. There's... How many people are fluent in sarcasm? You're fluently sarcastic. Right. And in certain situations, that's appropriate. In the heat of the moment, when vulnerability is on the table, sarcasm may not be appreciated. Right? And the worst is untimely laughter. So, you and I are having a deep conversation about how you feel. I disagree, and I start laughing. Like, and that's gonna piss you off right there. You do that shows an utter disrespect for a pain I may be feeling or an issue that may be serious to me, and you're laughing about it. Untimely laughter is going to shut that thing down. It becomes offensive to people. How many already know you got something to work on? Okay, amen. One of my major problems is that I'm a shutter down. I shut down talking. After a while, I stop talking because I know me. And I can be a mean son of a gun. And there are times I'm just going to shut up so that I won't say what shouldn't be said. Now, the problem, shutting down is a way of protection, but not when there's no indication that it's coming. So when I just stop talking all of a sudden, now there's an offense as opposed to me saying, you know, babe, I need to let you know, I'm about to say something I probably shouldn't, so I'm going to shut up for a little bit. I'm going to be quiet for a moment. I'm going to take a walk. I know. Say what you want to say. Don't push me because I'm close to the edge, you know. But I think it's important if you are a shutter down, if you're one that you know at a certain point it's just too much, what helps is to give an indication that you're about to shut down. I'm going to be quiet for a moment because this is going to a place it doesn't need to go to, and I'm going to be quiet. Now, you can keep talking, but I'm not going to say anything. Or I'm going to take a walk. I'll be back at some point. There are things that I think because we don't like being hurt, because we're trying to be protective, so fixing some of this automatically requires that you believe you can be vulnerable with the one you're speaking to. And that's what it's all about. Is this person someone you can be vulnerable with? And if not, I'll suggest to you that loving them may not be of God. If you cannot be vulnerable. Listen, let me tell you what the Bible says. You all know it. Adam and Eve were naked and not ashamed. Right? Not nude and not ashamed. You can get nude with anybody. Naked is about a vulnerability that I can expose the good, the bad, the ugly, the sensitive, the insecure, the stuff I'm not proud of, and know that the person who sees it will not try to wound me. If you can't be naked, if you can't be vulnerable, then maybe you shouldn't be nude. Right? If I can't trust to bear all of I am in your presence, then I shouldn't bear my sexuality. That I think communication is critical. It helps us identify who the Lord is and is not calling us to in a permanent relationship, in a marriage. If you're with someone that you know is intentionally malicious and is not trying to be corrective, that's not something you want to enter into long term. That's abuse. Right? That's abuse. And you and I both know at this stage of life, if you are over 25, you have enough experience to know when communication ain't working. God gives us signs all the way through. Now, we're good at ignoring them. But you know when something left a bad taste in your mouth. In communication theory and relationships, there are 3 different personalities within the room. And no one fits in just one, and I'm not saying these are only 3, but there are 3 major dominant personalities, and identifying your personality in communication will help you understand why some other people have issue with you or why you and some people can't get along in relationships. So let me share with you the 3 dominant characteristics of communication. They revolve around 2 issues: processing and talking. Okay, let me see if I can explain. The 3 characteristics or dynamics or personalities of communicating have to do with how you process and how you talk. How you reflect over what it is that's bothering you or your issue, and how you choose to communicate it. And one of the ways you can process these, put these in, are 3 categories. Let me share with you the first one to help make sense, and then I'm going to ask you which one you're in. Many people are one and dones. And these are the people who, when something's bothering them, they're going to process it, but they're going to take a moment before they talk about it. They want to understand how they feel correctly. Then, these are those who want to have one conversation, and hopefully we can put this to rest and be done, so we don't have to go back to this, right? I've been thinking about this. I'm bringing it to you. And Kelly, something's been on my mind. I want to share with you what I've been thinking about. I'm hopeful that in one conversation, I can be heard, you can share, we can put this to rest and we can move on. We're going forward. The one and dones. Right? I just want to deal with this one time. A second pattern are the let's be thorough people. The let's be thorough people are the ones who believe that maybe it needs more than just one conversation and that there are a lot of issues that revolve around this. So we're going to process some feelings. Let's talk. I'm going to process again. I'm going to come back to you. We're going to talk again. I'm probably going to process again. We're going to talk again. I'm going to process again. We're going to talk again. Because for them, what's most important is that we cover it from A to Z. That in order to move on, we have to really look at this from A to Z. This isn't just me listening to you and saying, I'm sorry. This is us really unraveling everything. This is getting to the foundation of our relationship. This is establishing those core principles upon which we build. And this is healthy. This is healthy for some people because this is not that they wanted to keep going. This is that they want to build a foundation to make certain we never have to go through this again. So this has to be thorough. This isn't just an incident. We have to re-examine the foundation, right? That we dig deeply. And some people are, let's be thorough. Like, let's work this thing out and deal with it. Then there are the, I want to be heard. These are the people who process and talk at the same time. So they're talking while they're thinking and processing, but they really don't want you to say anything. They want you to let them get it off their chest. Like, I want to be heard. That this is therapeutic for me. That I can't just bring this to you, you say I'm sorry, and we move on. I need to get it off my chest. I need you to hear me out. Now, without being, how many people are one and dones? Okay. How many are let's be thorough? How many are I want to be heard? Now, question. Which two of these clash the most? 1 and 3. One and done, and I want to be heard, clash the most. One and done's, think about it, take some time, talk about it, let's move on. This happens almost immediately, and it just keeps going. Statistically speaking, these are men. And more often than not, these are sisters. I'm not saying every sister, I'm not saying you're only in that box, but you have to understand the nature of most men is to hear it, fix it, move on. The nature of most women is to emote, relate, and heal through relation. Yes. That men and women are sometimes wired differently in communication patterns. So this model is rough for brothers because we have a not all, but generally speaking, men have a what do I need to do to fix it? Right? This model says sit still and listen. Right? Okay. Now, brothers, by wave of hand, how many men in here like to hear your woman say, we need to talk? That is torture on a man. We need to talk about what? What I do now? Can't I just say I'm sorry? Because it requires a space that most men aren't comfortable in, which is just sitting and emoting and relating. When I would rather just do and fix. Can I just go pump gas in the car and fix? Can I just take you out to dinner tomorrow? Can I just take you out to dinner and it'll be over? Do you really have to tell me how much I messed up? You need to be heard, I know. But it's important just to know how you process and talk. Are you one that needs time? Are you one that wants to stay in it? Some people want to stay in the conversation till it's done. Some people want to back away. Someone said the timing in which you raise it. For some people, I need some time before I raise it. Others, I need to raise it right now. You know, that I don't sit well with things. Real quick, how many people know you don't sit well with stuff but for so long? Like you get, we need to talk. We need to talk. Like right now. Although 1 in 3 clash, marriage counselors across the board argue this is the best one. To somehow try to force yourself to find the best of both worlds. You know, that we're going to talk, we're going to process, that everything doesn't have to happen right now, that I'm not going to process on you, but I will come to you with how I feel. We're going to talk, try to resolve things, move on. That when you find that middle ground between who you are and who they are, that's why I think it's important to just know your own communication style so you can understand why someone else may not be able to communicate with you and what you need to do to make that kind of change. Because in every relationship, you have to learn to speak their language as well. Right? That's the challenge. That's why I don't believe a lot of people have the strength to sacrifice to be married, because you don't want to learn someone else's language. You want to speak your language, you want people to speak your language, but you're not willing to learn to give her the space, or you're not willing to learn to sit and just listen and let her talk. You're not willing to let him stop and not have to deal with it right now. Timing is important, learning. One of my pet peeves, when I walk in the house, don't hit me with stuff. Right? Give me 35, 40 minutes to shower, change, sip on something red or brown, depending on what day it was. If it was a good day, it's red. If it was a church day, it's brown. Give me a minute. Yes. Learning the timing of when someone is approachable is critical. How to approach them. You know what? We talked about the tone. I found it a weird thing in a relationship. I've seen married couples who are as sarcastic as anything I've ever seen, but they're both sarcastic and it works. Right? I know cursors. I mean, I'm talking about full-blown PhD in vulgarity cursors, but they both curse and it works. I have found that I can be a cursor. But listen, Listen, don't judge me if I ain't cursed you out. That's what I'm saying, right? Because this is all theory for you. If I've never cursed you out, you don't know that. But I do know in a relationship that I have a tendency to curse. And for some people, they can get with it, they don't, because they know I'm not cursing at them. I'm cursing in the conversation. And then there's some, the minute the first vulgarity drops, their walls are up and they're gone. Like, maybe they have a past with that, with someone else that was abusive with that language. Or they say, my dad never cursed at me, I'm not going to let you. Right? That's real stuff. So learning to change those. Remember, what makes you a better communicator? Reflection and correction. Reflect on your pattern and be able to correct some of your habits so that you can just say you've done the best you can do. Okay. Let me close this down real quick. I didn't come to be deep, but I hope I'm being helpful. I taught a Bible study the other day, and a lady came to me, and she gave me one of the most unique compliments I've ever heard. No, it was a sermon. It was a sermon on Job. And understanding the difference between the Calvinists and the free will folk. For those who are at church, you saw it. She came to me afterwards and she gave me one of the most unique compliments I've ever heard. She said, thank you for helping me understand me. To understand why I'm over on that side of the equation. Right? Tonight, all I want you to do is understand why you're on what side, and maybe the one you care about is on the other side. And that if you can fix the communication problem, you can deal with any issue. Right? So a few tips that come out of most counseling sessions. One is to always take ownership of your own feelings. Tempora said, there's a difference between you, and me saying, Tempora, when you say that, it makes me feel like such and such. Right? Take ownership of the feelings. Now, if you're with someone who knows you've been hurt by what they said, and that doesn't matter to them, open your eyes. Everyone's wall goes up when they become defensive. So if you come on the attack, Tempora, you're going to be shut down. But if I say to you, when you did such and such, it made me feel like you didn't respect me as a man, that ought to mean something. You ought to care about my feelings. Right? Feelings are just feelings. They're not always based on fact, but they're powerful. They need to be respected, and you want to be with someone who respects your feelings. So that when I say to you, that hurt me, I want you to care about that. I want you to be able to say, I'm sorry that what I said hurt you. That was not my intention. I'm sorry that what I said made you feel disrespected. You've got to avoid silent frustration. The one thing I can tell you from 20 years of pastoring is that at some point it's coming out. And it's better to come out closer to the offense than years later. Because years later, more offense has been added to it. Healthy relationships deal with stuff the minute it comes on. You know what we found out on your car? You want to know the worst things you can do in a car is? See the check engine light and not pull over. That's a horrible thing to do. It's a horrible thing to know the check engine light's coming on and you keep pushing. Because eventually you're doing more damage than what the check engine light originally came on for. When the check engine light comes on in the relationship, pull over. If you keep driving for months and years, you're going to do some irreparable damage. No one can sit on an offense forever. We've already talked about avoiding always and never, indicating when you need to press pause. I need to step away for a moment. This isn't healthy. I found it healthy to repeat what I've heard. So, Gil, what you're saying is such and such. And that gives you an opportunity, one, to know, did I hear you clearly? Or two, did you clearly communicate? So you can say, no, Pastor, that's not what I meant. What I was trying to say was okay, because I don't want to respond off of my misinterpretation or your miscommunication. So I'm repeating it so that you get a chance to hear, that's exactly what I meant. Okay, now I can respond correctly. Right? Repeating. Be careful about reading between the lines. As best you can, Focus on one issue at a time. So Sharnika and I are arguing about whether she should go back to school, and she brings up something I said to her mother 2 weeks ago. So now I've matured to the point where I would say, okay, Sharnika, you know what? Let's pause the school conversation and let's deal with what I said to your mother, because obviously that's not resolved. But when that's done, we're coming right back to the school conversation, because we're not going to mix those two. If we mix them, we're going to have two unresolved issues and two offended, hurt people. Focus on one at a time. The worst thing in the world in relationships is what I call emotional gumbo, where you're just throwing everything in the pot at once, and it doesn't come out well. The last piece of advice I give you before we go to our prayer meeting, some of y'all gonna be praying after this game. Give you best piece of advice. Best piece of advice came to me. I use it at every wedding. If you've ever been to a wedding I've performed, you've heard this. Deacon Milas Hatchett was a deacon in my first church. He was celebrating his 83rd birthday and his 50th wedding anniversary to his wife, Anna. They were 80 plus, he was 83, 50 years of marriage. I said, Deacon Hatchett, what? Well, first of all, I asked him another question that you had to know Deacon Hatchett. Deacon Hatchett, when I was sick once, made me a hot toddy. He called, he said, Pastor, are you feeling better? I said, I don't know if I feel better, but I feel better. I feel much better. Deacon Hatchett was 83. I remember asking him once, I said, Deacon, you 83 years old, you've been married for 50 years. When did you stop noticing the sisters in church? When did that not catch your eye anymore? He said, you got to find somebody older than me. He was a funny guy. So I asked Deacon Hatchett on his 50th anniversary, he's 83 years old. I said, what's the key to 50 years of marriage? He gave me some advice that I'm going to pass on to you. He said, you both can't act a fool at the same time. It will save a relationship. You both can't act a fool at the same time. If he's acting a fool, you got to stay calm. If she's acting a fool, you got to stay calm. You both can't be at 10 and expect it to work. Somebody has to sacrifice going to 10 to bring it down. And one of the things I tell people all the time, you can bring me down, but if you want to go to 10, I can go to 10 with you, right? Quickly and easily. So if I intentionally scale down to 2, I need you to at least drop down to 6, right? Because if you stay at 10, you're going to bring me up to 10. And we both can't act a fool at the same time. Work on your communication patterns so that you know you've given it the best, and if the issue can't be resolved, at least you know that's a relationship that wasn't meant to be. But it starts with reflection and correction. Right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lift up a prayer in a moment. And if you're here tonight and you're not a member of a church, or even worse, you can't say that you're a Christian, it'd be the joy of this church family to share with you the awesome love of God in Jesus Christ. How opening your heart to the Lord will change your life in ways you can't even begin to imagine right now. We have a saying at Alfred Street, amazing things happen when you say yes to God. That a heart that says yes to God experiences amazing things. So if you've never said yes to the Lordship of Jesus Christ, after this prayer, while others are leaving, there are going to be some deacons of our church who are just down front. We're going to invite you to come down and speak to them. They will share with you how much God loves you. Won't you bow with me in prayer as we get ready to leave this place? Lord, we gather in this place, and some of us are in one of two places. In a relationship that was meant to be and one that was not. And the ways in which we communicate and how they respond are ways of discerning, is this potentially what God has for me? Lord, I pray that tonight something would have been shared that would help one brother, one sister to understand not only who they are, but who they're communicating with. That we will grow and mature, that we might be like Paul, who said, you've got to learn to speak words that people understand. And if they don't respect the feelings, if they are intentionally malicious, if they can't, God, communicate with us, then maybe that's not where we're called to be. I thank you for growth. I thank you for the opportunity to do and be better when we leave this place. Now keep us safe and sound until we're able to meet together again, and may somebody on Thursday know and believe we were in church on Wednesday just by the way we carry ourselves. This is our prayer, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. If you want to join our church family, become a disciple, come on down. For the rest of you, go in grace, and may the grace of God go with you.